Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar about student success during a pandemic. It's a pleasure to see all of you here today, both you who are joining and participating directly, and those of you who are sitting and watching this later on. And my name is Christian, and I'm managing partner here in Damban Analytics, and I brought Mikkel.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mikkel Skjollegger, and I'm the head of digital learning at Damban Analytics.
And we want to take you through this short presentation here and come into some real use cases about how to utilize new technology in the area of education and training and corporate learning and stuff like that. So one thing is that the pandemic is challenging the education industry. If we look at it from overall, there are three things happening, and one of them is just building on a development that has recently going on for quite some time. If you look back, for instance, prices from U.S. universities have skyrocketed from 1,400% from 1980 to 2020, and in the meantime, dropout rates have risen to 40%. So you see that there's not a synchronization between what you would as a user call quality and the funding, the payment that you're doing in this area. The pandemic has just increased that challenge to the business model. And for instance, if you look at the UK universities, more than 3,000 employees have been fired from March to September 2020. Also, in Australia, you see 20% of employees are expected to be laid off in the next year to the next year and a half. And that's basically because they are usually having a lot of international students that are coming to Australia. So it's a really good export service that they're doing, with people coming in and graduating and taking their entire education. And if you look at the US colleges, they expect a loss of $183 billion as a consequence of Corona. Harvard alone, they previously said that it was going to cost them a deficit of around $700 to $800 million. So they're huge numbers challenging this industry. Furthermore, if you look at what's actually happened, a second thing that's happened is that everything has gone digital. So developments that previously took 10 years have now been done in 10 days. And that has made, things completely change the way you operate and drive education and training in reality. But at the same time, the third thing is that has actually not been very beneficial to the student environment and to whether or not the people are studying are actually believing that they're having a good life as students. So student study environment evaluation. This is an evaluation from the Danish University of Southern Denmark that they just published on LinkedIn a week ago. And the student study environment evaluation has shown to be the lowest point ever. Furthermore, 1 out of 4 students are lonely. That's twice as high as the year before this, the last time they did this evaluation. And so I think that all of us, we can agree that's a challenge, and it also originates from Corona, which is accelerating this pandemic. It's accelerating some of the drivers that we're seeing, but also really making a kick to the universities and the education institutions that are trying to do as good as they can. Just to give you a short, brief introduction to who we are working a lot within analytics, within the corporate learning and the higher education sector. And we have been working we're based in Stockholm and in Copenhagen. Mikkel and I, we're sitting here in our Copenhagen office. We're based in Stockholm and Copenhagen, and we work with clients throughout Europe and North America. And now, actually, I think that Mikkel, I'll give the word to you if you'd say a bit about how can technology and AI and data and analytics help the universities come across this barrier, this big challenge that they're having right now?
Definitely. Yeah, because as Christian mentioned, there are of course a lot of challenges associated with the pandemic in the education space. However, there are actually also a lot of possibilities arising from this new way of working, because as everything is going online, of course, there is a lot of data being collected, and that can actually support some of the core ambitions of higher education institutions. So this can actually help you achieve your aspirations as a higher education institution, whether that be higher quality, rising in rankings, lower dropouts, all the different aspirations that you as an organization are looking to achieve. It can actually also drive organizational change, these new possibilities in analytics, and actually start to define your departments and the way you work completely differently to align with the possibilities. The last thing is the overall improvement of data usability. And with that, we see that when you improve your data quality and the way you work with data and view data as an organization, you can actually start to improve the data usability and see all sorts of new projects actually arising out of this sort of core work that you do with data. So it's important for us to stress that while the pandemic, of course, presents a lot of challenges, this educational leadership and innovation is actually also being pushed forward by the pandemic. So these are some of the good sides to this development. One of the things that we see is the work on predictions and predicting some of the key outputs for all higher education institutions. So that of course includes dropouts in the first year or full study time completion, also study time delay or the specific credits accumulation, and of course also transition to master or employment, which is of course a key parameter for all higher education institutions, whether they actually get employment after their studies. One of the new things that the pandemic has put on the table is the idea of student engagement. And of course, student engagement is not a new concept as such, but when people are sitting at home behind their screens, it can be very hard for the educator to actually understand and feel the presence of the students. And that's when student engagement actually becomes very important and one of the key predictors and key measures to predict when working with student success. So these are some of the things that higher education institutions should look into, and some already are looking into making these predictions and actually acting on them. However, in order to be able to...
We just got a question here. We got a question here from Barbara, who has written directly on our email. You can write to us at the kmp@damvad.com or msk@damvad.com, and we will just answer it if you want to. So Barbara here says that he's a professor and he wants to know a bit more about how you can handle some of the non-numeric data points that such as psychometric data or behavior or stuff like that, and how we work with that. Can you maybe give a word or two to that, Mikkel?
Yeah, definitely. The fun part or the good part about everything going online is that you actually can start to collect this very thick data. So that's when you start to look into the data that is not measurable as such. Traditionally you would look at grades, you would look at maybe attendance. If you take attendance in your institution. But with this new data, you can actually start to look at the behavior of the individuals on these platforms. So with the digitalization and platformatization of the education experience, we actually collect a lot thicker data and data from new data sources. That's speaking to one of your points, I think, about behavior. And if you also start to look at sort of the inner life of the student, a lot of these platforms will also have the possibility to do small surveys, for example, and small engagement exercises to actually assess the mood of the students. But I don't know if you, Christian, would like to maybe elaborate on this before I move forward with the idea of the data mapping that is probably needed.
I think it's a very good question and a very good answer, Mikkel. Just two things just to add on your answer here could be that sometimes we're looking at, how often are the students present at the university usually when they're not, online. But then you can look at the engagement, as Mikkel says. Also, we have been working a lot with the natural language algorithms and processing to understand what is actually what do people actually write? What are the types of comments? What do they like? What don't they like? So there are new possibilities of looking at that at the same time, but exploiting completely different data than the typical numerical data. So that's it for me.
And actually, touching on that point, as you see in this map, we've looked at the student satisfaction surveys, and that's of course another way to also include some of these more sort of soft data points, I would say. Just one important point to this: of course, all analytics projects are only as good as the data input that you have. So it's very important that you actually map out your data sources and how they connect, and where there are potential missing links. And of course, this needs to correspond with your ambitions and your goals for your projects, because you don't need all the data sources to get started, but you need to look at what are your goals and what data sources do you need to actually achieve those goals. So it's about connecting the needs of your project with the fundamental fundament, which is of course the data. If we dig a bit more into that, of course, combining all the different data sources is where you actually start to gain this real deep value and understanding of your students. That includes, of course, admission data, institutional data, education-related data, and the activity. But what we are seeing now with the use of the LMS platforms as a more and more sort of key platform, actually the learning management systems themselves are also starting to deliver on these capabilities, actually starting to provide individual level predictions, for example, on likelihood of dropping out, that education institutions then can use to engage with students in different ways that I'll actually come back to in a second. Just one sort of example of how LMS systems actually implement these systems. Christian, you had a comment?
Yeah, that was just that we also got a question in from Anton here, and Anton says, "Hey, it's a great webinar. Thanks, Anton. We appreciate that a lot. But this question is for you, Mikkel, and it's about responsible use of student data in higher education. How personal should higher education institutions get?"
Yeah. Of course, it's a key question, and I think all education institutions should be able to look themselves in the mirror and defend why they use this. I think there are a lot of good points as to why it's a good idea. of course, the benefits of this is actually that you don't really strip somebody of possibilities. You're actually providing a service to them, and I think that's an important distinction to make when you use these sort of advanced analytics capabilities. However, I would also say that actually going back to using the use of behavioral data can be very empowering to students, because what we present is actually things that people can change. So knowing that you have a high likelihood of dropping out because of your parents' education, you can't do anything about that. But if you are told that you have a high likelihood of dropping out because you don't engage enough with the educational material, that's something you can actually change. So I think it's important to think about these questions and understand why you want to do this, and then actually move about it in a way that supports your goal. One other point I would like to make on this is actually with one of our clients. This has become a key concept in the entire project, where we actually want to build a learning object that the students can then engage with to understand the pros and cons of these projects, and understand sort of the inner workings of algorithms and how they actually provide these predictions, to be able to actually discuss this at a much broader level with the students, and also the students will be able to take this out into their own professions once they're done, of course. So I think that's some of the key points, at least from my perspective, to be aware of in this space.
I agree on that, and I see that some of the things that we've been working with some of the UK universities, the students, they actually demand that they use it. They expect them to use it. So that was just to wrap up your very good answer to the question.
Yeah, just some brief, very specific advices. Always store your data on as time series, and always be able to track your students over longer periods of time. It's important to actually include your course information. Also include when a training session is ended, and also when a student, for example, is dropped out of the course, also in the training set, and have these sort of background information on courses is important. And finally, always think about what are the links between your different data sources, so you can actually add more data. This is of course important for the LMS systems themselves. And they have a golden opportunity to be aware of these sort of very specific technical data issues, but actually these advices also goes for higher education institutions themselves, if you want to move along with advanced analytics and student success. My last point before I want to hand over the baton back to Christian. These sort of initiatives can actually be used on a lot of different levels. So our proposal is always start with the individual. Start with the individual, because you can always aggregate up. You can't always aggregate down, if you can say it like that. And be aware of how you want to use this. So do you want to use these insights before the studies even start, to for example provide specific courses that we will predict that is going to be important for the individual, or is it during their time spent studying? Do you want to use it on the individual level? Do you want to use it focused on a specific faculty, or do you want to focus on a specific sort of cohort that you actually define yourself? So of course, going back to my original point, you need to think about what are your goals, what are your aspirations, and actually build the model so it actually achieves the outputs that you want. So
Mikkel,
so
we got a
Christian,
question
before I,
more. We got a
yeah.
question from Fatima actually, and Fatima is asking. This seems very prescriptive the way you're looking at these models here, Mikkel. What is the right level of prescriptiveness, and how do you handle that? Are they prescriptive, and how do you handle that in a good way that makes value for the students?
Yeah, and of course, all of this is focused on actually changing behavior, right? We want people to start engaging more with their studies. We want them to avoid them dropping out. So in that sense, of course, yeah, it is prescriptive. However, the model itself is predictive, and then the actions you take on top of those predictions, that's when it becomes prescriptive. And you actually start to sort of mold the future based on these predictions, and that's where the professionals and the educators and the student counselors come in to the picture and actually take this knowledge and apply it in the real world. So yeah, in that sense, it is a prescriptive thought and a prescriptive idea to actually being able to predict the future and act on it. That's super important, and I think the one of the key ideas for this. And before I hand over the word to Christian, I actually want to hand it over to you with a question, and of course. With the pandemic, a lot of universities are moving classes online, and that was of course seen as the short-term solution. But how does that affect the ability to provide student success initiatives?
Well, I think that to some extent, obviously, as we saw in the beginning, the playing field is getting worse. It's more challenging for the universities and the education and training providers. That's one thing. On the other hand, it makes it easier for them to measure and learn from the data, because that the students are already available on they're actually there, they're present at the digital platforms. However, there are more challenges coming into how they can actually handle these things, because they need to take new measures. And now we all get a lot of places around the world. We are getting back to school, so to speak, and back to the physical institutions. And I think there's a need for us to set in and see who are actually challenged by this and who are at risk now, and how can we move ahead to improve their student success even more on this area. One of the groups that are really interested in, especially this topic that you just asked about, Mikkel, are the funders here, because in many countries there are a lot of funders who are actually tracking or who are actually funding the scholarships for those who are in need for scholarships but who can't pay it for themselves, hopefully so they want to make sure that the funding that they're giving out actually means that the students that they're funding are going through and getting a good education here. And I think that, here's an example for somebody that we're working with, a partner of ours called Smart Simple, and they build a platform where you can track and monitor that completely and follow it in a good way. But also, it also means that a lot of that there's a possibility of actually not just of providing the tracking and the data warehousing and the front end statistics, the descriptive statistics, through platforms like Smart Simple, but on the top of it, build models that are able to understand who can we successfully enroll, who should we expect are able to carry this through, and while they're doing the studies, how can we actually do that, and then intervene with students that you are funding at the same time on an individual or a group level. So that was actually what we intended to say today here. And you're more than welcome to write to us. Some of you already did write some brilliant questions, and we are thankful for that. And you're also welcome to look at some of the solutions that we have here at these links. And for that, I think it's just to say, have a great day out there. It was a pleasure having you on board today, and hope that you gained something from this quick 30 minutes.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.